Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be here. And it's wonderful to see what a beautiful day it is. This is why we're all here in Florida, I think. There's probably some other reasons, but this is an ideal day. And I want to thank you for all your help in my campaign. Lots of you were involved in it, and it resulted in a good result for me. I love the job. It's very complicated. There's a lot going on, but I'm thrilled to be your representative. And what I've done today is brought a short PowerPoint, and Mike's assured me that my technology is going to work. So what I really always like to do when I address people like this, address groups like this, is take questions, because what I want to say is maybe not what you want to hear. So I'll try to go through this quickly, and then we'll get to the questions, because there's a lot of issues, both for the county and for Palm Beach, that I think you'll want to hear about. So here's my first click. Let's see if it works. It did. Okay, here's some fun facts about Palm Beach County. We are the largest county in the state of Florida, probably larger than a couple of states in the rest of the union. We've got 38 municipalities, which is not necessarily a good thing. We've got a lot of different competing jurisdictions, and that sometimes creates problems with interjurisdictional issues. We've got about 11,000 employees at the county commission level. 6,300 of those are controlled by us. The rest are controlled by the other constitutional officers, mostly the Sheriff's Department. There's tons of things going on in the county, and even as a candidate and fairly familiar with what was going on in the county, I wasn't aware of how much we do. So I've created a couple of discussion items here. This is purely a subset, because there's many, many more things that the county does that we could be discussing, but these are the things that I thought would interest you today. Here's the county's official budget figure. It shows about $3.9 billion in both collections and expenditures. I think this slide's slightly confusing, because it's got department transfers and fund balances. So the next slide that I prepared, I think it gives you a better picture of what the county does. It's still, quite large. We take in about $2.3 billion, and we spend about $2.3 billion. The interesting thing about this is, everybody gets concerned about the mill rate and ad valorem taxes. As you can see in our sources here, ad valorem taxes are only a fraction, really, of the $2.3 billion that we take in at about $860 million. The rest, let me see if I can get this. Well, okay. Doesn't work. Okay, the rest, licenses, permits, and fees. These are things like gas taxes, utility fees. Intergovernmental is transfers from the federal government, from the state government, from other local governments for programs that we do. Charges for services. We've got a couple of profit-making businesses, which I'll go into later, including the Water Utility Department and the Department of Airports, but they account for a significant part at $530 million. Interest income, this year is not going to be a good year for that, but we've budgeted and in the past have historically collected about $44 million in that. And what do we spend it on? General government, that's the operations of the county commission, the court system, the other constitutional officers. Obviously, the largest part here is public safety, which is sheriff and fire rescue. Physical environment, this is anything that improves our physical environment, like beach restoration, water and sewer, mosquito control, various other things like that. Transportation, this is our road program, our airports, PalmTran. Economic environment, these are things like housing and community development. Human services, these are mostly health related, although they include animal care and control. Human services, culture and recreation. These are libraries, parks, anything that relates to making your life culturally better. Sheriff, again, largest part of the budget at $486 million, largest single item. I think he's doing a great job in areas like crime control, gang control. He's had some pretty interesting proposals, which maybe you've seen in the paper today, about figuring out a way to prevent the types of mass violence that we've seen in Connecticut and various other places. So I think he's, again, doing a great job. Department of the Airports, this is one of our enterprise funds, which is accounted for separately, which means that it doesn't really rely on any ad valorem revenue. This year, we're looking at $90.5 million in revenue from it. This is from landing fees, from gate rentals, from running the newspaper stands at the airport. As I said, takes no ad valorem money. It operates separately. And all of the, as you know, probably, all of the people that shuffle through the Palm Beach County Airport provide an economic impact of $3.5 billion, which is not insignificant. We've got a bunch of, or a few general aviation airports in addition to Palm Beach International, North County, Lantana, and Glades. What we're trying to do is move most of the general aviation traffic off of Palm Beach International and onto the North County Airport to relieve whatever traffic congestion we've got there. Fire rescue, I think you're all familiar with that. You've got your own department out here, but the county department has a budget of $192 million. We've just gotten a new chief. We've gotten a new contract with the union, and those are two things that you'll probably be reading about soon. We have about 117,000 calls a year, which is a fairly significant volume, as you'd probably expect. Most of these are medical, 93,000. But the interesting thing to me here is that we still have a lot of fires, and we've had close to 2,700 fire calls within the last year. So it means that traditional firefighting is not dead. We still have these things. Quite a few of these actually are arson based and crime related, and the department works very closely with the sheriff's office to investigate when we think there's suspicious fire circumstances. Another big part of what the county does is environmental resources management, and this is particularly important to me because, as you can see, these are environmentally sensitive lands that the county has either purchased or acquired through the state, and most of them are in my district. There's 31,000 acres of environmentally sensitive lands within the county, and 27,000 of those acres are in my district. The distinction here between the red and the green is you take that big area in the middle, that's the Loxahatchee Slough. Obviously, there's no public access to that. That's a watershed and a source of drinking water for the county. But the green areas, which we've acquired, are managed by the Department of Environmental Resources and are open to the public. And we've got walking trails, biking trails, bird watching areas, and it's a lot of land really to manage. And thanks to my predecessor, you probably understand why a lot of these areas are in the North County. Karen was very, very concerned with and involved in preserving environmentally sensitive land, and she succeeded through various bond issues and just expenditures out of the budget to acquire these lands for the county, and we're very fortunate to have them forever. They're in perpetuity. Here's one of the projects that the Environmental Resources Department did in conjunction with the town of Palm Beach and the state. You can't see it here, but the C-51 canal discharges into Lake Worth about a mile south of here. The C-51 canal starts at Lake Okeechobee and comes all the way to Lake Worth. But while it does, it drains a lot of the agricultural areas out west, and those agricultural areas are obviously, the runoff is nutrient rich, and what happened is it wound up destroying the environment on the bottom of Lake Worth and killed all the oyster beds. And the three groups that were involved decided that that wasn't a good thing, and I agree it wasn't a good thing. So we put some substrate in, some rocks, and created some artificial oyster habitat, and now the oysters are back and thriving. And the good thing about that is that oysters are good for the water environment. They're good for the marine environment. They're good for the bird environment as well. So, you know, we've had, I think, a real win-win there, and we're happy for the cooperation that we've had from the town of Palm Beach on this project. Convention Center Hotel. This is something you've heard about. It's been a long time coming that we finally have a real deal, and this thing is going forward. The Convention Center has been a sort of thorn in our side. It's operated at a loss, and most people believe that that's because we don't have a hotel nearby. So what we've gotten is a 400-room hotel, a 500-space parking garage, and the very good thing about this, although there's been some criticism of the deal, is that the county's put up $27 million. However, it will retain control and ownership of the land and the hotel, lease the hotel to the operating company, which is Hilton at the time, and we're very confident that because of the presence of additional hotel rooms, the convention center is going to attract more and more events and will eventually become profitable, probably quite profitable. In addition to that, seeing the success of this, it's sort of an iterative thing. We think that other hotel developers will look at downtown West Palm Beach again and, you know, create some more hotel rooms there. Again, our risk is de minimis. We've got only the $27 million committed. Any overruns are on the back of the developer. Bioscience, this is something that in the north part of the county where I'm from, we're very excited about. We've got the confluence of having the Scripps and Max Planck Institutes together within, you know, hundreds of yards of each other, and that is unique in the world. There aren't really two preeminent institutions like this together anywhere, and we think that that'll continue to grow in itself. Scripps doing quite well, you know, creating a lot of intellectual property. Max Planck had its official opening in December. There'll be up to 135 scientists and associates by 2015. The German government showed its own confidence in what Max Planck is doing by committing and announcing on the day of the opening in December that they're going to support it to the extent of $10 million a year for the next 4 years. So I've met with Dr. Fitzpatrick, the head of it. He's very excited about being here. He's attracting scientists left and right. They want to be here. Other institutions want to be here. This is a slow process, but I think ultimately we are going to realize our goal of having a very significant bioscience cluster in the north part of the county. Palm Tran Connection, you've probably heard a couple of bad things about this recently, and you should have, because We took on a new vendor on this contract in August. There were multiple problems. This is a service that provides door-to-door transportation for mostly medically disadvantaged, elderly, and handicapped people to get to doctor's appointments. There were horrible stories, which were all true, about them being late, missing pickups, getting people on oxygen who only had an hour worth of oxygen to their home 3 hours late. So the jury is still out on this. The contractor has added a lot of vehicles, added GPS capacity, added and done some retraining of their drivers. Their on-time rate has gone up above the contractual minimum in the last few weeks, but again, we don't know. So this is something we need to keep our eye on. It's a vital service for a lot of people, and we've been letting them down. We'd hate to have to replace the contractor on this because it's very complicated, but if they're not performing, that's what we're going to have to do. Solid Waste Authority, last thing I wanted to talk about, another massive operation within the county government. We do collect, although we don't collect everybody's waste, several subcontractors do that. We do process eventually all the waste that is generated in Palm Beach County, and that's close to 7 pounds per person. So we've had, I think, a very successful enterprise here in recycling material and reselling it. As you can see here, we recycled about $11 million of sellable material last year, and again, very, we've got a giant landfill out there, but we're filling it up much more slowly than we thought we would in the past, and that's because of this. We've got a renewable energy facility, a waste-to-energy facility, which sold about $17 million of electricity to FPL in 2012, and that's just the facility that we have now. We've got a new one coming online that's you probably read about. It's being built, $700 million facility, much more efficient. The good thing about this is it reduces the amount of residual waste that we take in because we burn a lot of it and convert it into energy, and therefore the amount that we have to place in the landfill is reduced radically. And what we've done because of that is extended the current useful life of the landfill that we have to 2046. So again, $700 million. We did it through bond financing, and as you can see by the ratings there, S&P and Moody's have rated this Solid Waste Authority as the highest solid waste authority in the United States. So we're quite proud of that. Anyway, that is the end of my presentation, so I'd be happy to take questions.
When you said you're looking at moving private aviation from Palm Beach International to the North Airport, what are you exactly referring to?
Well, we're trying really hard to, there's been some criticism of PBIA for not having enough nonstop flights to various places in the country, and we are, frankly, losing to Fort Lauderdale in terms of accessibility, and I think a lot of people are driving there. What our airport director feels like is, although I'm not 100% certain that I agree with him, is that general aviation traffic is making it more difficult for commercial flights to get in and out. So, as I said, what we're trying to do is extend the runway, the runway, current runway at North County Airport is 4,000 feet.
Where is it?
It, it's good. It's a hidden gem. It's on the Beeline Highway, and about a mile and a half north of PGA Boulevard, and nobody knows about it. And frankly, what I'm very interested in doing in terms of economic development in the north part of the county is getting that runway extended, because if you look at what Boca Raton has this time of year, you've got tons of corporate jets there and tons of people coming down to spend weekends or weeks here. We don't have that in North County, and it's because the runway is only 4,000 feet long. The current expansion plans are to take it to 6,300 feet, which would accommodate any corporate jet. And I think it's a wonderful, asset for us to have in the North County in terms of economic development. There's other properties coming online which could serve as corporate headquarters, but having good transportation within a 5-minute drive is, I think,
I don't want to prolong it too much, but why not, if you really wanted to do that, why not keep some portion of Palm Beach International open? It's tremendously valuable to people in Palm Beach, a lot of people in Palm Beach, to have that available. You move it way up north, what are we going to do, move our houses up there?
well, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a long-term plan. I don't think we're going to ban general aviation from there, but I think what we'd like to do is sort of create the economic development opportunities up in the North County that would necessitate having more corporate aircraft up there. They won't be banned. That's just a long-term plan. But I understand your point.
Can I help
Lloyd,
you a little bit on
sure.
that? I'm on the airport
Sure.
board.
Yeah.
NetJet is building their own facility just at on Belvedere Road, just west of the airport. And that's to allow the other Signature and Jet Aviation and Galaxy more space to expand. I think we want to get the smaller planes out, mainly the prop planes out. And the big ones, I think, Rand, or you're safe on your Gulfstream.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Lloyd. No, I appreciate that.
Safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What we need are two landings, one to depart and one to take off. Add the traffic, but it makes it a lot more convenient on Friday afternoons when the planes are coming in here, or Sunday afternoons when they're leaving.
Certainly.
So that was all set, approved, designed until 2019. So, or 2009. So we're hopeful to get the traffic back up a little bit, and we'll have a little more comfortable arrival and departure.
Good. Good. Please, some more questions.
Where was that water, you talked about the outflow going into Lake Worth, and I wasn't clear exactly where that was.
The C-51, it comes in about a mile south of Okeechobee, and it's what's called the Palm Beach Canal, and
Where is the outflow here? Does it come down here?
well, it comes into Lake Worth, and
There, that's what I was trying to
about, I think it's around Southern Boulevard or somewhere, close to there. But it's the main canal that drains from west to east. And, we've had, there's been some efforts to treat the water before it, before it gets into the Lake Worth Lagoon. But the volume is so much, especially in heavy rain events, that you can't treat enough. So.
You know this as well as I and other people that come from other parts of the country, which is a lot of people here in Palm Beach and North Palm Beach too, that everybody comes in and they wake up one morning and they say, well, why don't we have reservoirs? Why does all this water flow out to the ocean? And why aren't there any reservoir systems? We know the answer is it was built by developers. They didn't have to do it. They didn't do it. But the question really is there a longer-term reasonable way to do it, to build water storage. You have to only get 66 inches of rain
Right.
down here in the summer, which is the largest amount in the country. Only the Olympic Peninsula is the only place that gets any more.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we lose most all of it.
Well, one solution that's been proposed that I'm a proponent of, and it's related to the C-51 canal, is called the C-51 reservoir. And I don't want to get into too much detail, but Palm Beach Aggregates is a miner of limestone, and they're out on Southern Boulevard just past Lion Country Safari. And we built a reservoir out there 5 or 6 years ago called the L8 Reservoir. And for some reason, there's a geological anomaly where limestone, which is usually porous, is not porous in this particular area, and it's like a bathtub. And they had finished mining and realized that when it rained, water stayed in there. And there was some scandal involved in this, like there is in a lot of things in Palm Beach County. But it wound up being a very good solution. There's an area just west and north of there on the same property that could I think quadruple the capacity of this, and I can't remember the numbers, but it would store hundreds and hundreds of millions of gallons of water, which would help us both in the wet and dry seasons, because in the dry season, if we had storage there, we could release water for agriculture, for drinking water, for various other things. In the wet seasons, when things rain and it's empty, we can, direct the water into that. So it's just in the incipient phases of being considered, but it's something that I think is really necessary. We've had really bad water problems up in the north part of the county. In the acreage, we had flooding during Hurricane Isaac. There was nowhere to put the water. I mean, it wasn't a question of not having the capacity to pump water. Everything was full, and we really couldn't get water off people's properties. This would be a first step in that solution, as well as other reservoirs. I mean, it's part of what's called the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Project, which envisioned tons of reservoirs. Unfortunately, because the federal government and every other government is pretty much broke, there's no funding to build these reservoirs. But the C-51 could be privately funded. There's a bunch of water utilities, both in Broward and in Palm Beach County, that are anxious to have this thing built. So that if you keep your eye on that, and when you hear about it, support it, because there's no environmental impact, and it, I think, provides a very good solution to the storage and disposal problems that we've had. Sure.
Like Lloyd, I'm the director of the Everglades Foundation, and help Bob and all. You're absolutely right. There's a huge comprehensive plan that's going on and has been building for many, many years. The SBA, stormwater treatment areas, C-44 canal up in north by Indiantown, et cetera, are all designed as storage areas for the reservoir, i.e. Okeechobee being our biggest reservoir that's out there. The Everglades project is, you can fit the Everglades project, the state of New Jersey inside the Everglades project,
Right.
which includes everything from Kissimmee to Okeechobee down through. But $7.5 million of us get our drinking water from that. And Bob, it's on its way. The governor just appropriated $60 million in his budget. It's now up to the legislature to help these projects continue to go forward. So,
Well, it's,
It's billions of dollars, there's no question about it. But it's one of those infrastructures that you have to have.
you certainly do, because if we're going to have any growth in Florida, and Florida, although I'm hopeful that we're going to transform our economy, into a knowledge-based economy through Scripps and Max Planck, we still are dependent on people moving here and wanting to retire here. And if we don't have water for them, that's not going to happen. And so I think there's, the legislature responds to various stimuli, but I think the stimuli of not being able to accept any more people as retirees in Florida is going to hopefully, make them decide on the right side of that issue. Sure.
Couldn't they eventually use the water from C-51 to purify it and have it used in yards and homes and so forth? Was it supposed to be fresh?
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, the nutrient standards that have been imposed, I would say, that have been proposed and imposed by the EPA are very, very stringent, and it's difficult to. We've got within Palm Beach County, within our water utility department, which, by the way, if it were a separate business, it's a $165 million a year revenue business. But they treat a lot of water and reclaim it and use it for golf courses and various other things. But the treatment is expensive, and with the C-51 reservoir, because we have rain events, you just can't. It's got to get out there. If you don't drain all that area in the summer when you've got these massive thunderstorms, you're going to flood everything upstream a bit. So treating that much water, which is a complicated process, probably not feasible. We try to treat a little bit of it, but it's really not moving the needle that much. But ultimately, if we have a better reservoir system and a better water storage system, then we can treat everything. So I think it's a good suggestion.
Pythons out of our water reservoirs and
That's not my area. Yeah. Pythons are, I think, Commissioner Taylor's area. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
I just got a message that the Florida Department of Transportation is talking about closing the North Bridge permanently. Have you heard anything about this?
I have not.
What did you say?
At a meeting this morning.
He said he's heard that the FDOT is thinking about closing the North Bridge permanently.
It's breaking news, just as we meet today, that the Department of Transportation has deemed the North Bridge unsafe and is going to close it through the duration of the building of the new bridge.
As of when?
I don't know as of when, I'm sorry. But as of soon. There's some discussion about keeping it open at some level through the season. But I don't know how far those negotiations have gotten. This has all been breaking in the last 24 hours. And just now it's going public, but it is true.
I will. Please don't repeat this, but, FDOT is a difficult agency to deal with. And, if you are a local, they sometimes ask what your opinion is, but most times they don't. So, sorry to hear that.
Well, some of us have experienced what it was like to live through this with a closed bridge. I in 20 years I've been here, have never seen anything like it in terms of backup. And it took an hour to get from the Paramount building to the middle bridge. And I think we're looking at a fairly serious situation. And
Yeah.
maybe, Mr. Valeche, you could somehow put in a good word for us.
Sure.
If
No.
there's a way to avoid that, or at least just some sort of modification of that, it would make all the difference in the world, especially to people who live in the North End.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to the businesses. I think the business community on Royal Point Santa Way is going to be in big trouble.
Yeah. No, I agree.
No, they're still looking for alternatives, but I understand they're just going to close this one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's a serious situation.
Yeah. No, I'll be back in the office in an hour, and I'll be looking into it.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Any other? No? Okay. All right. Thank you.